Today on the Eurostep.
The conference finals are heating up.
Where will Michael Porter Jr. land?
And we have a look at the NBA rumour mill. Hi, I'm Oisin Brown and this is the Eurostep on CRC. Today I'm joined by Killian Loftus and Alex Evans.
Breaking news, Elfrid Payton cut his hair.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
Damn, I hope it's real. Maybe I just think now that he's cut his hair and he's able to see, he's going to average a triple-double next season.
No, he did it for a while in the Suns. So.
What, 3 games?
Yep.
His first 3 games, he was a monster, to be fair.
He averaged 22 points in the first 2 games. I mean, if he can keep that form up for the whole year, you know.
You never know.
You're not.
Oh yeah, he was the topic of our first episode.
Exactly.
God damn. Right, so the Boston Celtics are 2-0 up in their series against the Cleveland Cavaliers after they beat the Cavaliers 107-94 despite LeBron James's 42-point triple-double. Kevin Love scored 22 points, Kyle Korver added 11, but it wasn't enough as the Celtics performed brilliantly. Another solid team performance as they always do. Jaylen Brown with 23. Al Horford had a 15-point double-double. Game 3 is in Cleveland on Saturday night. I will start with you, Alex. What you make of the game?
Yeah, it was a weird one. The Cavs got off to a hot start. They were playing well in the first half, and it was real close up until half time. I say the Cavs got off to a hot start, and it was still a very close game, which just goes to show how the Celtics were playing. And then come the second half, the Celtics just started to dominate as LeBron slowed down. He scored the majority of his points in the first quarter, I believe, putting up 21 or 22 points.
21.
And he was on track for an absolutely historic game. It was already a career night for LeBron, but that could have been almost a 60-point triple-double. He wasn't as aggressive, especially in the second half, which really led to the Cavaliers' downfall, because he was the main reason they were any but close, and when he slowed down the slightest, we saw that the Celtics really came back into it as a team.
Just as you said it was absolutely amazing how LeBron James had an absolute legendary first quarter. We can all agree on that. He had 21 points in the first quarter. He was hitting 3-pointers like Steph Curry on steroids. But the Celtics managed to only be down 4 points after one quarter, which at that point you're like, yeah, they can definitely win this game. It was the third quarter where the game kind of turned favours. Terry Rozier was absolutely unreal. He had 14 points in the third quarter, I believe. Showed us what Scary Terry's made of with a really nice dunk on the fast break. It's a weird one for Cleveland because they had a good game. You can point out certain people. J.R. Smith didn't play great. George Hill the same. Jeff Green was alright. But in general, the Cavs played well in Game 2. The Celtics just played better, and when you're getting a 40-point triple-double out of your best player and you still get beaten by about 14, I believe it was, it's a scary sight for Cleveland when it comes to trying to win this series down 2-0.
Yeah, and as well as that, the Cavaliers, they just weren't there altogether, whatever about scoring, but you need to do everything else right if you're not going to score well. They had 15 turnovers for the game, which is just far too many considering the Boston Celtics only had 5. Now the first game, we know the Cavs people were saying that they were really sloppy with the ball and they only had 9, but that's got to improve. They got to be on target and at least get shots up. If they're not going in, you got to get enough shots up, so that's got to be better. But aside from that, they didn't shoot the ball particularly bad at all, because they shot 46% from the field and 32% from 3. That's better than Boston's field goal at 43% and the same as their 3-point at 32%. So just the lack of attempts really let them down, and the Celtics killed them with 3-pointers and fast break points. So they've got to be more efficient when they have the ball on offense for Game 3 to have any chance.
Yeah, well, that leads into my next question. What exactly do Cleveland need to do to get back into this? Because whatever about their performance, but storylines certainly suggest that they are a long way off the Boston Celtics right now.
They need to get Marcus Smart off the court. He's been the MVP of the series so far, I'd say, even with guys like Jaylen Brown putting in absolute work. When Kyle Korver got hot in the second quarter, I believe it was, Marcus Smart said, yeah, no, you're not scoring anymore, and he didn't score a single point for the rest of the game. He had an amazing night with 11 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds and 4 steals, really showing just how valuable he is to the Celtics and that he really deserves a max contract this summer, even if he isn't the all-star level, even if he is an all-star and he doesn't get recognition for his play. His shooting's a bit iffy, but he's an unreal player in every other aspect of the game. The Cavs need to do something with him, just re-injure that thumb or something.
Yeah, one thing I think, obviously if you're looking at the box score, people who didn't watch the game are obviously going to say that, well, LeBron James did what he could, everyone else has got to be better, which is true for the most part. Guys need to step up, like George Hill and JR, who the backcourt combined for 3 points, whereas the Celtics backcourt combined for over 40. But LeBron James as well has got to be more aggressive. He played 38 minutes. He nearly has to play 40 plus minutes, and he's got to keep a consistent pace up the whole game. He can't let the Celtics blow ahead, because the Cavs aren't going to come back down from double digits. This Cavs team, the way they are, their state of mind they're in, they're just not going to do it. They've got to get out and get hot early and try and hold on to a lead, because Jeff Van Gundy said it best. He said, like, they're like an old married couple rolling their eyes at each other the whole time. Whenever anyone did anything, it was just bad team chemistry. And then when you look on the opposite side, the Celtics, they're such a good team. They play so well as a team. So I think if LeBron is more aggressive as well, that'll open up the floor for the rest of the guys, and they can get their shots. Because 21 points in the first quarter, and he looked absolutely unstoppable. And from the rest of the game, it just seemed like he shot pointless 3-pointers or fall away jump shots. Yeah, they can go in on his night, but the first quarter he did such a good job of getting down low and putting in easy baskets.
Yeah, the game 3 is on Saturday in Cleveland, and you have to say they have to win both of these games at home to have any chance of getting this series, because, you know, I suppose in the last couple of years people have come from 3-1 down, but this Cleveland team aren't one of those teams who can do that. I don't think they've shown if you disregard the Toronto series, because Toronto were shambles for most of it throughout the regular season and in their first playoff series against Indiana and in this series, you know, it's skin of their teeth that they got to where they are. And despite, I suppose, you know, Boston missing Kyrie, missing Hayward, they're so well drilled. And whether, I suppose, if you want to be a cynic, you could just say maybe they're system players. I don't believe that, but I'm sure there are people who will say that just to maybe disregard some of those Celtics players. But Cleveland just aren't good enough right now, and something has to change drastically if they're going to win this series and do anything in the finals.
It'll be tough for Cleveland. You know, Boston have obviously they've been the home team of the playoffs this season, but they can play away from home as well. They had the best away record in the entire Eastern Conference for the regular season. You know, they talk about their land and protect that. They really need to protect the land. They really need to do that. Everyone needs to show up for them to beat the Celtics, not half your team. Everyone, like George Hill, J.R. Smith, even if they're just threats from outside, it adds something. It opens up the court for LeBron to just do his thing. They need more help. We've said it over and over again, but it's just what they need.
Yeah, the Celtics there have been a good away team for the regular season, but come playoff time, some of the players haven't been as effective away from home, with the likes of Terry Rozier, who's nearly 6 points down on a scoring average when away from the TD Garden. He's phenomenal when he's up there in Boston. But with the series now shifting to Cleveland, Ohio, and the crowd getting behind these Cavs, that might make them more together, I think they will be better, and I think they will steal Game 3.
Well, for the interest of the neutral NBA fan, I think they need to win Game 3, because otherwise it's just going to be just boring, these playoffs. But moving on to the Western Conference, something very interesting, depending on who you ask, was pretty surprising. The Rockets beat the Warriors by 22 points, 127 to 105. despite Kevin Durant's 38 points. But Steph Curry was the only other Warrior with double digits. He dropped 18.
16.
16.
Whoa.
Gee, damn.
Stage.
However, the Rockets played a brilliant game of basketball. Eric Gordon and James Harden both scored 27 points. Harden on a double-double. PJ Tucker scored 22. And then you had the likes of Capella, Paul adding to that as well. They just played brilliant basketball, and that is exactly what you need to do if you have any chance of beating the Warriors. But one thing you could take away from that is, if you look at the Warriors' box score, you could say they were absolutely terrible. They still scored 105 points, which is pretty decent considering you could say it was one of their worst performances in quite a while, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Their bench kind of stepped up to an extent, you could say, with the guys like Klay Thompson at 8 points, Iguodala had 5, Draymond 6, you mentioned Curry, only 16, that's pretty bad for him. But guys like Sean Livingston, Nick Young, Kevon Looney, Quinn Cook, even Zaza Pachulia stepped up. Sure, they only had 5, 6, 7 points, but that adds a lot coming from your bench. In general, it wasn't a great game for Golden State. As they say, live by the three, die by the three. When you're Golden State, that can change a bit because they are threats from other aspects of the court. But they shot 30% from three, which is terrible. Only 46% from the field. It's not bad, but you want to be shooting a bit better considering Houston 51% from the field, 38% from three. And they were equal enough in turnovers, just their shots weren't going in. Houston, we mentioned it before, you need to play an almost perfect game of basketball to beat the Warriors, and they really did that. They had nearly 4 guys with over 20 points, with Harden, Gordon and Tucker, 27 for Gordon and Harden, 22 for Tucker, and Ariza had 19. It is a brilliant team game of basketball for the Houston Rockets. I just don't think it's much of a surprise that the one game Zaza Pachulia plays, they get blown out by 22.
Whoa, JaVale McGee's the real center.
Exactly.
Yeah, but looking at the Warriors, they put up 105 points. And Lushin said, it's not bad. But in the context, 105 points is never going to beat this Houston Rockets team. Just going forward, they're just phenomenal. They continued what they did in Game 1. They just worked to a lot more effect. The players off the ball had more movement. They were a lot less lazy as they were in the first game. Their plan was James Harden the pick and roll and get Steph Curry on him and just whoever offense on Steph Curry. We saw Chris Paul with the 2 questionable ankle breakers on Steph Curry and James Harden just going to work on him. They just do such a phenomenal job of getting the switch and getting Curry onto him. And it seems to be working not only on getting easy baskets, but wearing Curry down so he's not as effective on the offensive end. He had 16 points, 7 rebounds and 7 assists, which doesn't seem like such a bad statistical game. But he shot 37% from the field and a whopping 12.5%, 1 for 8 from downtown, which is not at all Steph Curry at all. Much like his other splash brother, Klay Thompson, who had a whopping 8 points, 27% from the field, and 50% from 3, but he only made 2.
4 attempts.
It's not good enough at all. But you've got to give credit to the Rockets, putting up 127 points against this good team defense in the Warriors. They exposed their weak points in Steph Curry, and they're just doing everything they can. The Warriors didn't seem like they made many adjustments from Game 1, where it was much the same. I definitely think Steve Kerr will have to make some adjustments going into Game 3. But just getting everyone else involved. PJ Tucker was fantastic with 22 points, only the 4th time in his career he's had such a feat. Trevor Ariza also adding 19, and Eric Gordon with 27. All them guys, they've got to play as a team and beat the Warriors, because James Harden himself isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, I suppose it's brilliant to see that the Rockets can do that to the Warriors. Obviously, look, the Warriors are not going to play like that every night. They're going to be much better. I suppose just even hearing those shooting percentages from Curry and Thompson it's hard to believe. But still, the Rockets played brilliant basketball, and there's, they'll definitely make this series at least interesting. I still don't think they have enough to win, especially now going to the Oracle. Since is it this the last season that they're playing in the Oracle, or is it next?
Couldn't tell you.
They're moving soon anyway, so you know full well the Warrior fans are going to be really rooting for this team.
The Roracle is going to be rocking.
It's called Oracle for a reason. I think everyone will step up. It's usually what happens at home. We talked about Terry Rozier. His difference is the guys like Steph Curry. He's been there his whole career. He's definitely going to try and step up and show the Oracle fans what they're made of. I wouldn't be surprised if they won both games at the Oracle just because they're so good at home in front of their own fans. It'll be really tough for Houston. It's kind of weird thinking that Golden State, they're 1-1, but they're going back home. It's weird with them being the lower seed, but it's going to be a massive advantage for them.
Yeah, I think going back home will help them as well, not only with the crowd, but they'll feel more in control of the game. The game in Houston, the Rockets started to pick up the pace, and the Warriors, widely regarded as probably the fastest team in the NBA, almost shocked that the Rockets were trying to run with them, and the Warriors just started playing sloppy. A lot of turnovers, like the Cavaliers, they had 15 turnovers also in game 2. So from a team that's usually so clinical with the ball and so efficient going forward, it's just much like the Cavs. They do have to be better with the ball. I think will help them though getting back home.
Yeah,
because quickly they did everything they needed to do in Houston. Get one game, gain home court advantage. I don't think they were too stressed over losing game 2. I think the Rockets really wanted game 2 more than the Warriors did, and they needed it a lot more than the Warriors did.
Right. Maybe this question is a bit in vain, but does anyone believe the Rockets still can go on to win this series now?
No. I think they could bring it maybe a bit further than I originally thought. Maybe 6, possibly 7. It's not out of contention, but I still 100% back the Warriors to win the series.
Alex?
The Rockets are starting to convince me, to be honest. I still think the Warriors are going to win this series, but the Rockets are a lot better than I think, and there's definitely a possibility that they can pull this series out of the bag. We've seen what they're doing. It's taken 2 seasons for someone to finally figure out how to play the Warriors, and this Rockets team is just completely set up to beat the Warriors and dismantle that team. So if they can keep it up, it's going to be interesting game 3, because there's definitely going to be a lot of coaching changes for either team. Steve Kerr is going to have to address their defensive issues with Steph Curry, and then we're going to have to see what Mike D'Antoni is going to do to try and make sure their offense is still as hot as it ever is. So game 3 is definitely going to be interesting, and if the Rockets can pull one here in the Bay, then it's going to be a really exciting series, and I definitely think the Rockets do have enough. I just don't think they will.
Moving on, there's been some, I suppose, interesting movements in the rumour mill. We haven't seen really a lot of it during these playoffs. It's just kind of been pure basketball, but now we're seeing a little bit. I'll start off with Dennis Schroeder. He recently he talked about that he wants to play for a competitive team. He doesn't want to be second bottom in the league. He's unfollowed the Atlanta Hawks, and he's also said he'd be interested in playing in Indiana and Milwaukee, which would be interesting. Do you think Dennis Schroeder could go to either of those teams?
It's hard to know where Dennis Schroeder is going to go. He could be a guy that might just go after the money. He is still a young guy, so deciding where he can go could help him if he wants to chase a ring or if he wants to chase money. He has the options there, because I'm sure he's going to get a lot of offers. He's a good young playmaker, and he's only going to continue to get better. He's kind of almost a perfect point guard you want in your team. But it's so hard to know with guys like this. We know your star players. There's only a select few teams they're going to go to, but the guys, the couple tiers below them, they really could go anywhere. It's hard to predict where a guy like that is going to go. But I think Indiana could be a good fit. Obviously, they have Darren Collison this year, who's starting to decline. I think Dennis Schroeder and Victor Oladipo, a young backcourt to go along with the rest of the young guys there in Indiana, like Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. I think that could be a good young core going forward. I think an exciting one for Indiana and Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, especially you talked about Indiana, but for Milwaukee as well, replacing Drew Bledsoe with Dennis Schroeder would be very good. We saw Eric Bledsoe isn't the most perfect point guard for the Milwaukee Bucks, but pairing Giannis with a good young point guard like Schroeder would be a great option, even if he's not the kind of great shooter. That would be good to surround Giannis with. He could really go anywhere. There's, Brooklyn always throws money at people, so maybe not so much because we saw they do have a decent team.
D'Angelo, Jeremy Lin.
He could be good 6-man. Jeremy Lin could be a good 6-man. He nearly won 6-man of the year a few years ago. He was my pick. But there's tons of teams around the league that could be looking for a point guard. You might look at the Timberwolves. They do have Jeff Teague now, but he is on the way out, and it'd be good to replace him with a guy like Dennis Schroeder. So, Towns has someone who he will, could play with for years to come, rather than Jeff Teague, who will be declining soon enough.
Alex, would you take Schroeder at Miami?
No.
No?
No, I don't see a point in Miami going after Schroeder. They have their guys, unless they're looking to move Dragic. I don't think Schroeder wants to go for a backup role. I think he will want to look somewhere where he can start. So I don't see him going somewhere where there's already an established point guard. So that kind of rules out a few teams, but a lot of the kind of lottery teams, or even some of the better teams, everyone needs a good point guard in this league, and the arrow win. Good shooters, and just a guy that can kind of do everything, handle the ball, be a good playmaker, and run your offense. So there'll be a lot of teams looking, but I don't think he fits Miami, or I don't think Miami will look at Dennis Schroeder at all.
No.
Next, Kawhi Leonard.
Again.
It's a pretty big step up from Dennis Schroeder.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a tap. According to speculation today, the San Antonio Spurs will only accept a quote Grand Slam offer for Kawhi Leonard, and if they do not get that kind of deal, they are willing to push Kawhi into the final year of his contract and run the risk of him leaving for nothing. Bold from the Spurs, but at the same time, I suppose you could expect that. There's, Kawhi is one of the best players in the league, and you're not going to let a player like that go lightly.
No, but I think that kind of Grand Slam statement kind of rules a lot of teams out. There was speculation about the Celtics possibly looking at trading for Kawhi. That's gone. Danny Ainge doesn't like to trade up much, and I think especially with the young guys stepping up in these playoffs, a lot of them have become completely untouchable, I'd say. I'd be surprised if they made a trade whatsoever. The other location, we just looked at Milwaukee, they're still plausible. I think something like if you traded Chris Middleton, maybe even a Jabari Parker, that's a good deal for the Spurs. You're getting two very good players in return. It's still a pretty good Grand Slam offer to an extent, but probably not what they're looking for. They're probably looking for a young guy who has proper all-star, superstar potential, and maybe even a pick alongside him. They want a lot for their superstar.
I know everyone all teams out there are looking for a superstar, but I think with this one, teams might be a little more reluctant. With the Spurs stating they're only going to accept the best of the best offers, the Grand Slams, teams might shy away a bit. Obviously, there's a few rumoured teams like the Knicks. The Knicks are going to have to give up everything except Porzingis to create a Kawhi-Porzingis duo, and then there's no point in that because you have all your money locked up pretty much once Porzingis gets his new contract in the upcoming years, and there's no room for improvement there. A Kawhi-Porzingis duo isn't going to win you an NBA championship with nobody else on the team. You need other players, and especially with people raising the question of his backroom staff, whatever, his group, his so-called group. His mandem. With his uncle and all them involved, stating that he wants to play in a big market. A lot of the smaller markets might shy away in fear of him leaving after just one season and throwing away their whole future just for 1 year of Kawhi Leonard. Definitely teams won't be as willing to trade for as they might be for other superstars. So it's a bit of a weird one. There's only a few locations where you might go to, we've obviously seen that the Lakers might be looking to pull out as well, as they strongly believe they can get him when he turns into free agent in 2019. So with the teams we've ruled out there, with the possibilities, there's only a handful left. So see, the rumor teams were kind of Los Angeles, New York, Boston, Miami, Milwaukee or Philadelphia were kind of the front runners for Kawhi, and we're after ruling out the majority of them there. I think only Milwaukee or Philadelphia and Miami are left, and I still don't think they're going to go after him either.
To be honest, I don't know what Miami can put forward to get Kawhi. I mean, you have to give up you kind of have to give up Dragic.
Richardson.
Richardson.
Looking at younger guys, I'd say.
I suppose you probably could hold on to Dragic, but you'd be moving Richardson, Whiteside.
Probably Winslow, maybe.
Winslow. You're giving up too much, really. I know Kawhi is good, but you are running the risk. He's only there for a year, I suppose. There was that to maybe a lesser extent when Boston traded for Kyrie Irving.
He's another year.
He had another year, but then there was a risk from the Cavs side as well with IT's injury, whereas all the risk is kind of on the team looking to get Kawhi. The Spurs are, once they accept an offer, there's no risk from them. The only risk they have is potentially losing Kawhi for nothing, but it's hard to see that happening.
Yeah, the Spurs are a smart organisation, there's no doubt in that. We've seen how brilliantly they draft over the last few years. Obviously, Deontay Murray really steps out, but the fact they even traded for Kawhi back in 2011, I believe it was, really shows that they are a very smart organisation. They'll definitely get stuff back for Kawhi. I just don't know if they'll get the Grand Slam offer they're looking for. They could just be kind of trying to bluff it. We saw it a lot with the Kyrie Irving trade you mentioned, how the Cavs said we want Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum as well because IT's injury came up, but then Danny Ainge said no, and they said, yeah, fine, we'll just trade for that. So it could be this kind of thing for the Spurs. They're just trying to get a bigger offer than what they would have originally gotten. It's smart enough. They might just take a lower offer that was better than they originally would have gotten without that statement.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I don't think with the way the Spurs are right now, they won't want to hold on to him and lose him for nothing, because looking forward, the Spurs are on the decline. They've been at the top for so long, top of the NBA for so long. Their 50-win season streak came to an end this year. They're going to want to improve, and whether that's with or without Kawhi, you're going to need something if it is without Kawhi.
Another story, I believe it was yesterday, one NBA executive saying that people around the league believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers are, quote, screwed when, not if, LeBron leaves. And I think, judging by our analysis of Game 2 against the Celtics earlier in this episode, I suppose we'd be inclined to agree, unless something magical happens somewhere along the way.
Yeah, you can see where they're coming from. The only real asset they have right now, if LeBron was to leave, is the number 8 pick in this draft, obviously, from the Nets via the Celtics. You could look at Kevin Love, but I believe his contract's up next year, so they would have to look at possibly trading him this off-season to try and get some value back. Aside from that, they don't have much else. We have kind of younger guys. Jordan Clarkson, he's kind of, I think, reached his peak as kind of backup, maybe starting point guard. Rodney Hood is a pretty good player, but he's not leading any kind of team. And Larry Nance Jr., he's a glue guy rather than a star. So Cleveland, they don't have much. They're really banking on this 8 pick. Maybe they can fluke into a superstar with it. It's a pretty deep draft.
Yeah, Bleacher Report came out with an article saying that this is the worst team that we've ever seen LeBron on, and we have the numbers to prove it. So it is hard to know, but I think one thing is if LeBron does leave this team, I think we won't see improvement, but individually I think the players on the Cavs might be better, because we've seen with Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood, two of them especially, have done jack all when it comes to their stint with the Cavaliers, two very promising players when they came to Cleveland from LA and Utah respectively. Rodney Hood was tipped to be one of the most improved players coming into this year, and he was supposed to average 20 plus points with Hayward's absence. Jordan Clarkson was much the same. He was supposed to break out this year and be really good for the Lakers with their young core. But ever since they've got to Cleveland, they've done next to nothing. So it's hard to know, but with a few guys, young guys in Cleveland, like the two I've just mentioned, Larry Nance Jr., Chetty Osman, there's something to work on if they do end up taking their 8th pick. And, there's 5 decent young players that they have a decent future and have something to look forward to, rather than just leaving them completely in the dirt like we saw LeBron do last time.
Yeah, there's a small little bit of room for hope, if LeBron leaves, and I suppose they will have cap room, just saying if he were to leave this summer, but it's just would.
If LeBron leaves, they could end up trying to get rid of Kevin Love as well.
Yeah.
With only 1 year left in his contract, it might be hard to find a trade for a guy like Kevin Love. He's, I think, viewed by a role player as many executives in the league, and to take on a decent player, and there's not many teams that have the cap room to take on Kevin Love at 20 plus million for a year or two. So it could be hard to find. But if you can dump him off to the Knicks or the Nets for a decent player and a second round pick or something, then I think the Cavs should take it.
Then again, we mentioned it when we were on about Whiteside a few episodes back. A lot of teams are looking for a centre, but
I think Kevin Love isn't that same Minnesota Kevin Love that could play centre. This Kevin Love is just different. He's a stretch power forward that's he's good, but unless you need specifically that role, you'll get on fine without him, I think. Especially what we've seen this year from Kevin Love, who's been not the same we've seen the last couple of years. He's been lackluster a lot of times, hasn't stepped up when he's needed to, hasn't been as aggressive.
Pretty inconsistent as well.
Yeah.
He was unreal in the Raptor series, and then he's kind of slowed down a lot against the Celtics.
That'll be an interesting story over the summer, and of course you will find all of the draft news here on the Eurostep. Finally, on with this edition of the Rumour Mill, Luka Doncic says he does not know whether or not these 2 games he has left this season for Real Madrid will be his last for Real Madrid, implying that he may not go to the NBA draft, which is, interesting considering, as we've talked about a few episodes back in our draft preview for Doncic, he is highly sought after, so it should be very interesting and unexpected, I suppose, if he were not to go to the NBA this summer.
Yeah, definitely. He's, many people think, the greatest international prospect ever, and I'd be inclined to agree. He's an absolute unreal talent. I think it's tough to say. It would be very worthwhile to go straight to the NBA. It's obviously a far better league than the EuroLeague, even though, no disrespect to the EuroLeague, it's incredible. But we could see it kind of with the draft and stash thing, not to that extent. We saw it with Dario Saric a few years back. He was drafted by the Magic, traded to the Sixers, and they stashed him for a few years. Everyone was thinking, will Saric even come to the NBA? He came over and he's a very good role player. We know today he's a very good stretch four. He's a tough player. It would be interesting for Doncic to stay in the EuroLeague with Real Madrid for another year maybe. He could kind of add a bit to his resume. He might be MVP this year. He could definitely get it next year if he wanted to. And maybe the Suns, Kings, whoever he gets drafted by, if he doesn't pull out of the draft, might view him as a bigger part of their future than they would already. Though I think he'd be a pretty big part being drafted number 1 or 2.
Yeah, seeing as he's been with Real Madrid since he's been 16, I suppose Real Madrid kind of gave him his big break. He might want to repay the club, because we've seen a lot of European guys that are more loyal than some others. He might want to repay Real Madrid with one last season, one last hurrah, and do something massive in the EuroLeague. His agent said that he has no preference on team, and it won't affect his decision
Come on.
going back to the EuroLeague. I don't know how true that is, but it could also relieve some of the pressure Doncic might have going into the NBA. Obviously, if you're a first or second pick, all eyes are on you for the upcoming NBA season. We've seen since the draft has been going on, the top 3 picks are just, everyone is watching them all the time to see what they're going to do, to judge them and call them a bust. But if Doncic comes over a year later, some people might forget about him, and then he might not be under the scrutiny of everyone, and he might be able to just play and not be judged for everything he's doing.
Yeah, try to impress everyone. We could compare it to Markelle Fultz. He had a lot of pressure on him, as you mentioned, as the number 1 pick. Not as much as other years, considering Lonzo Ball was easily the kind of player of the draft, most famous player of the draft anyway. Markelle Fultz, he crumbled under the pressure. I still think he'll be a great NBA player, but he completely lost his jump shot. People blame it on injuries, but I don't agree with that. Maybe Doncic is looking at a situation like that and he's thinking, yeah, I want to make sure when I go to the NBA, I'm ready for everything, not just in terms of basketball, but in terms of, the mental side of the game. It could also be, as Alex mentioned, that he just wants to repay Real Madrid for all they've given him. Maybe he wants to kind of win the EuroLeague. I'm not sure how it works, but win the whole thing for his team, and maybe that's why he's thinking.
They
He just wants to win everything.
They have a playoffs too. I don't know how many games. It's 4. All I know is that they have a Final Four, and Real Madrid just kind of dominate the EuroLeague.
Maybe that's what he's thinking. Like, he wants to win this year. If he doesn't, then he'll stay another year until he wins the EuroLeague for his team to repay them before he goes off to the NBA.
8
and
years
makes a few
later,
millions.
Doncic makes it to the NBA eventually.
I don't think it'll take that long. Although, interestingly, a few days ago, the Phoenix Suns changed their Twitter name to the Phoenix, swapped the I with the 1, and
With the first pick, of course.
with the first pick,
I
and
did it
then
before.
the first S in Suns, they added a European accent to it. I don't know what the accent is called, but maybe it could imply that they're going for a European player number 1 pick by the name of Luka Doncic.
Maybe.
Surprising that more people haven't really picked up on this.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing for a team to do, just throw the accent over the
S. Capital S.
Yes, there you go.
It was weird.
Uh-oh.
A lot of teams wouldn't kind of reveal, if they are saying we're taking Doncic, a lot of teams wouldn't reveal it, but it's not like the Suns have anything to keep a secret. They have the first pick, so it's not like anyone can take him and try and get a trade out of them.
Yeah.
At this point, they might as well just say we're drafting Luka Doncic,
Yeah,
whether or not he comes over.
I was just looking there. It's the same accent as the first
the C.
C. The first C, the 4th letter on Doncic. The same accent. I don't know. Aiton doesn't have any accent on his name, so that would imply.
Maybe we're looking to... No, not though.
Not only that, but the new Phoenix Suns coach, Igor Koskinov, I believe, is his name.
Something like that.
He has also coached Luka Doncic in the past, so that could really
Come on.
I could push Doncic to the NBA now. Obviously, with Phoenix having the number 1 pick this season, it's good. There's a high chance that they won't have it next season. Their team will probably be too good next season to go that low.
Depends if Doncic comes over.
Yeah, if
or not.
Doncic doesn't come over, they might still be one of the 5 worst teams in the league. They got another good prospect. You might be looking at Zion Williamson. There's RJ
Cam
Barrett.
Reddish.
There's some great prospects next year. We have some good drafts over the past few years. We still have some good more ones coming up. They might be looking at adding another great prospect to that already stacked young team. Then Doncic comes over with them, and that team is pure stacked. One of the best teams looking towards the future in the NBA.
Speaking of the draft, the draft lottery is made on Tuesday night. Just a few hours after we recorded our last episode. Number 1, Phoenix Suns. Number 2, Sacramento Kings.
Sacramento Kings.
Sacramento. Happy Tuesday.
Ha ha ha.
I was on the Sacramento Kings Twitter,
Hawks with the 3rd pick. Memphis Grizzlies at 4. Dallas Mavericks got 5. Orlando 6. Chicago 7. Cleveland from Brooklyn at 8. New York 9. And Philly 10. Charlotte and Denver have a pick each in the lottery, and the LA Clippers have 2, one of which from Detroit. Very interesting. Maybe a couple players, their projections might change depending on the teams who are looking at them, what needs they need to fulfill. But today we're going to talk about Michael Porter Jr. He is a small forward from Missouri. He only played 3 games in college for Missouri before having to leave for back surgery for herniated discs in his back. At times he had been projected number 1 in this draft before his injury, and just today he said, "I'm the best player in this draft." Very confident from Michael Porter Jr. So I'll start with you, Killian. What do you make of this guy?
He's an unreal prospect. There's, the injury is the main thing with him. If he hadn't gotten injured, he would likely be a top 3 pick. He could even be the consensus number 1 pick. He's an unreal prospect. He was the number 1 prospect coming out of high school from ESPN over guys like Bagley, Aiden.
He was the number 2
on
prospect out of ESPN. That's ESPN Top 100 for 2017.
I saw number 1 here somewhere, but either way, 1 or 2 doesn't matter. He's an unreal prospect. He's 6'10", small forward. He's a bit skinny, but he can do everything on the court. He can shoot, he can dribble, he can make his own shot, he can pass. He's no Ben Simmons when it comes to passing, but he's a very capable passer. That's his kind of...
his forte.
That's his forte, whatever that means. That's a word. We talked about the injury. It's the back injury. First game, kind of similar to Gordon Hayward. He hurt his back, and he was out for almost the whole season. Came back for the last 2 games.
3 games.
2 games. He played 3 games this season in the first game.
Okay.
Get what I'm coming from.
You're right.
He did all right in his last 2 games. He had 28 points total, but he did take 29 shots. He tried to do too much with what he was doing, trying to compensate for the entire season. In the final game of the season, in their loss to Florida State in the NCAA tournament, he had 16 points and 10 rebounds, which is a good stat line. He didn't shoot well, 4 for 12, but it's impressive. As a prospect, he could easily be the steal of the draft. He will fall down, because of the injury with that risk, but some teams might take the risk on him. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Memphis or a Dallas take that risk on a guy like Porter, and if he falls down, Cleveland definitely nap up a guy like Porter.
Yeah, you can't take any of his college games into consideration. He admitted himself that he came back too early. He came back just because he felt he could contribute something to his team. It's obviously not the same Michael Porter Jr. we saw, who dominated the high school scene completely and put up 52 points in a pro-am game with Jamal Crawford watching in the stands. But the injury, he seems like he's gotten over it and he seems fine now. He said it feels like a blessing in disguise. He felt he grew as a person and as a player, and also let his brother shine also on the Missouri Tigers. He also said he's 100% healthy, ready to go, and he is confident, as Ashley mentioned, saying that he believes that he is the best player in the draft, which that title's not up for debate. It's Luka Doncic. But anyways, he's an extremely versatile player. He says it himself. He's very similar to Kevin Durant. He's a 6'10", 6'11", small forward.
He's lanky.
He's a lot stronger, a lot bigger than Kevin Durant. Anyways, it's hard to not be lanky when you're 6'11", small forward. He's just over a 7-foot wingspan. So just based on his physique and his physical attributes, he's very exciting if he can do anything like it. Like some of these guys coming out of the draft, like Kevin Durant, like Giannis, like Tom Maker, just their bodies alone allow them to be very exciting. And as Killian mentioned, he's one of the top players before the college season. So if he can regain his game and improve on it, he's going to be one of the most value for money picks wherever he lands, because it's not going to be top 3, that's for sure. It could fall anywhere from 4 till...
Some people are saying late lottery. I'm not sure. I definitely think if you're Cleveland, New York, unless there's a guy that you really wanted, like maybe Bamba, Jackson, you definitely take the risk on Porter. If you take him number 8, there's no shame in saying, we risked it all on him. If he goes down injured for the rest of his career, like I said, he could easily be the steal of the draft. If he had gotten a whole season in college, he could have easily been the consensus number 1 pick. If he performed in Missouri, maybe did a bit in the NCAA tournament, it'll be very interesting to see where he goes and what he can do with that situation. Anywhere really he would fit. Chicago need a small forward. Cleveland needs something to build around.
Everyone will take a guy like Porter. Everyone wants a versatile wing that can play 2, 3 or the 4 position. A guy like Porter. He has the shot, he has the handling, he has the playmaking. I think most importantly, he has the work ethic. His head is in the right place, and when asked what are his weaknesses, he says, listen, I've got a lot of things I want to work on, a lot of areas, and I know I'm going to work on them, I'm going to improve on everything. And already where he's decent, like his scoring and his ball handling, he says, he's got to work on his ball handling, make that better. His body, he wants to be a force to be reckoned with in the league. And I think that's good. That's exactly what you want your young players saying. And I think it puts a bit of confidence into the teams that might want to draft him. They'll look after his back. I think the injuries now, they're not as much as they used to be with the way medicine and whatever and rehab and care is now. So I think he'll be fine. If I have an opportunity to draft Michael Porter Jr., I'm taking him. If he falls outside the top 5, I think it's almost ridiculous.
Yeah, a lot of people compare him to Blake Griffin in the sense of he can take up the ball, he can pass, but when he's doing it, you're kind of like, he's going to turn it over. Blake Griffin's a very weird player, and I think Porter Jr. can be that kind of player. Obviously not as big and athletic as Griffin, but he's a far better outside scorer and scorer in general so early into his career. It's really just a case of if he's falling in the draft, you take him. You take that risk on a guy with as much potential as Porter. Potential to be one of the best scorers in the league and definitely one of the best small forwards. Superstar potential. You got to take a risk on that.
Just to wrap up this draft segment, the draft combine, it's been historic. Firstly, Mo Bamba recorded the largest ever wingspan for a player in the combine. Wingspan of 7'10".
Wow.
Monstrous.
Whoa. That's scary.
Yeah. Duke's Grayson Allen recorded one of the 5 fastest shuttle runs ever in draft combine history, lane agility speed of 10:31. Another record for this season anyway, maybe not the one Jalen Hands wanted. Ironically, he has the smallest hands in the from the draft combine.
That's right.
That's right.
Ironic.
So that is about it for today. We'll be back on Wednesday. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on social media. We are Team Eurostep on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And Jesus Christ, Alex, what are you doing? We should put some cameras in here. Make sure if you enjoy our content, please support us on Patreon. We're Team Eurostep there as well. As little as €1 a month or whatever currency you use. It helps immensely.
We take rupees, we take yen,
Minimum 1,000 rupees.
Whoa.
It's like €2.
Until next time, it's going to be a goodbye from Killian, a goodbye from Alex, and a goodbye from me. Until next time, keep grinding.